Hey guys, it's Josh, and welcome back to the Not So Bad Bachelor Pad, your favorite podcast for learning how to balance between being a functional adult and a raging dumpster fire. Some days, we're all a bit of a dumpster fire. Joining me inside the Bachelor Pad today is Jeff Patterson. Jeff, thank you so much for making time for us today. How are we doing?
Hey, doing great. Thank you for having me.
Good. Now, what part of the country are you based out of?
I'm over here in Portland, Oregon. And yourself?
So we're based out of Nashville. Can you just tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah. So I've been running a martial arts academy and meditation center here in Portland, Oregon now for 30 years. It's been a major part of my life for about 36 years. When I started, I was very much into the thrill of martial arts. It was always kind of fun. And I was, as a young guy, very much into Western boxing. And I used to go to a boxing gym that's just a few blocks down the street here from my academy. And at a boxing gym, if you're not familiar with it, it's a lot different than your traditional style fitness class where you go in and you have one teacher who's running a group of students or athletes. Well, at a boxing gym, usually there's 4 or 5 coaches, and each one of those coaches might have 3 or 4 different fighters that they're working with. Well, at this one particular gym, one of the coaches that was at this gym was somebody who I had a lot of respect for, and I really wanted to get to work with him. However, he had a full schedule and had a set of fighters that he was working with and really wasn't looking to take on anybody new. So I would always kind of follow him around. And when he'd go to the gym, I'd always show up at the same time. I'd work real hard and let him know that I wanted to spend some time with him. And after about 3 or 4 months of following him around, he finally started giving me some tips and saying, "Hey, you could do this," and helping me out a little bit. And every time he gave me anything, I treated it like it was gold. I did it extra, put a little extra time into it and effort. And it was only about 2 or 3 weeks of having him show me a few things when he said something to me that changed my life forever. And that he said, if you really want to be a good boxer, you should start doing meditation and Tai Chi. Now, at the time, I was this 19-year-old kid thinking, isn't Tai Chi for like old people in the park? How's that going to help me be a better fighter? And so I wasn't really excited about taking on the practice and really didn't even have any desire to at all. But I had a lot of respect for this guy and I knew he was trying to help me. And so I decided to take on the practice. And through the years, not only has it been one of the best things I've ever done for myself, I've literally had over 26,000 students come through my academy, and I've heard hundreds of stories of how the meditative arts has positively influenced people's lives. And that's really kind of what's brought me to where I am today, in that that's what's been giving me the motivation and the energy to go out there and write my last couple books and create my online program and my teacher training program, because I'm just trying to get this word out there on how to integrate meditation into your life and see how easy it can be. And, it doesn't have to be the kind of thing where you retire to a cave and go meditate for the rest of your life. There's ways that we can integrate these practices into our day-to-day lives and really reap a lot of the benefits from it.
A lot of people don't really realize that there is a lot of overlap between martial arts and meditation. A lot of Eastern fighting styles, have a lot of tranquil or relaxation properties to it. Even the routine of, sparring and most practices, once again, just keep you grounded. So I could definitely see how, that coach made that connection and introduced you to that. You still spar or go out, or you just do a lot more meditation nowadays?
So here at the Academy, we have 4 adult programs. So we have a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu program, we have a striking program where we do boxing and Muay Thai, we have a JKD and a Eskrima program, and then we have our meditation program where we do a combination of stuff from the Tai Chi and the Qigong, sitting meditation, standing meditation, and breath work. And so we're pretty active in all of those areas. We have about 500 active members. It's a pretty big academy as far as martial arts academies go. We run 7 days a week. We have classes pretty much all day, every day.
I mean, that really is huge. Most dojos or practices are they focus on just, one discipline, and they might have like 30 students. But 100, it's a pretty impressive number. And especially when you're going 7 days a week, that means you guys are staying busy, which is amazing.
It's been great. I've been running this academy now for 30 years, and I have students that started with me on day one, that have been with me for 30 years. And it's pretty cool because it's kind of like my second family here. There's a lot of students that have been here 15, 20 years. It's really a great crew of people, and it's one of those things where we kind of leave all of the stresses on the outside and come in here and just do something positive, and doesn't matter what practice you're in. It's that kind of mentality here. And so it really is a good place to be.
Good. Yeah. I mean, fundamentally, that's one of the most important parts. Or I'm sure that's one of the main reasons you started your practice in the first place, is to give people a space to hone their body and mind. Now, I have to ask, as somebody who's also studied a few different martial arts in the past, have you ever had a dream person that you would love to spar or work with outside of your mentors that you've previously worked with?
I've spent my whole career kind of seeking out the teachers that I want to work with and
Mhm.
following up and making that happen. And so there's really, I mean, there's some people out there maybe that'd be interested in meeting, but I've already kind of followed up on that road and been very fortunate to have some really amazing teachers along the way.
That's no surprise. I was like, 3 decades is a long time. So I could only imagine that you have worked with quite a few people along the way. So the beautiful thing is there's so many more people that you could meet, or it's a relatively small community. Somebody knows somebody who knows somebody. It's only a matter of time before you bump shoulders with somebody who you respect or that you've heard a lot about. You get the opportunity to have that conversation with. The other side of that is the meditation piece. Now, what is one common misconception that you think a lot of people, when they hear meditation, that they just get wrong?
The most common thing I've heard people say is that, I tried meditation and it just didn't work for me. I couldn't quiet my mind. And somewhere, I think that people got misled thinking that in order to be successful at meditation, you have to reach this state of nirvana and this blissful place where nothing bothers you. Well, as I mentioned, I've been studying now for 36 years. I've traveled around the world many times training with meditation practitioners from all over the planet, some really amazing high level teachers. And I have never once met anybody who doesn't get distracted. We're all human, we all get distracted. And so, if you can change that mindset and shift and understand that it's okay to get distracted. We recognize these distractions. We use our practice to come back to center and find balance. And every time you do this, it makes us stronger. And so, having this ability to look at that as a positive rather than thinking that we're failing is one of the, I think, biggest things I think leads people off track with the practice.
Always thinking about the destination instead of the journey. You're right. It can be distracting. There are a lot. I don't know anybody, myself included, especially myself, who doesn't get distracted at some point, whether it's for a moment or it's for an extended breath. But you're right. It's how you recover that really makes the difference. We talked about this. There are so many different types of meditation, so many different camps and practices. How does your specific yielding warrior kind of differ from all those other mainstream or practices out there?
So, we don't practice any like one style, if you will. We more break down the science behind the practices and understand how to use the meditative arts through movement practices, through still practices, sitting practices, standing meditations, through breath work, through energetic circulations, through the philosophical side of the training, and learn how and why some of these practices affect us differently. So, we can build an evolving life practice around our lifestyle and create these fundamental foundations that will affect us no matter what meditation path we follow. And I've got these 5 core fundamental principles that I like people to contemplate and think about, because when they understand this foundation, then any meditation path they decide to do, they can go down that path. And I call these the five regulations, and they're regulating the body, regulating the breath, regulating the mind, regulating the energy, and regulating the spirit. Regulating the body is usually where we begin because it's the easiest one to see a lot of immediate results. And the idea of regulating the body is, think about a time maybe when you're sitting down at your computer, your body's kind of hunched over, you've been there 3 or 4 hours, you're feeling lethargic and depleted, maybe your neck's getting sore. And then another time when the most important person in your world walks in the room and your body perks up and you feel like you're on top of the world. Well, these two different energetic states we're in 100% control of all day, every day. But where do we choose to spend our time is the question. And on a little bit of a deeper level is in the body regulation, it's how are we maintaining somewhat of muscular structure in the body? How are we maintaining our flexibility? How are we using our diet to keep our energy levels up and get the right nutrients in the body? How much sleep are we getting on a regular basis? All of these things are kind of part of what we call regulating the body. Then there's regulating the breath. And regulating the breath is a very deep topic. This is something that you will study for the rest of your life if you take on the meditative arts. In Qigong, they often refer to Qigong as the science of the breath because there's literally hundreds of different breathing strategies. Now, because of that, we kind of broadly categorize them into yin methods and yang methods. Yin methods are often deeper, more holistic style of meditations that bring the energy inward. They're great for stress reduction, dealing with anxiety or panic attacks, or improving your focus. And an example of a yin breath would be if you ever listen to somebody sleep, their natural breathing pattern is a longer inhale and a shorter exhale. And this is the body's natural way of bringing your conscious mind into your subconscious mind, which is where we are when we're sleeping and dreaming. And so, if we want to emulate this idea of inward energy into our meditations, we can do longer inhales, soft retentions at the end of the inhale, and shorter exhales to help bring that energy inward. Then there's the yang side of the breath. And the yang side of the breath is more aggressive. An example of this would be if you've ever had to push your car, you pick up something heavy, your natural instinct is to exhale, put tension in the breath, maybe even make the breath audible. And this helps generate energy and extend it outwards. And so when we understand how to start using the breath as a strategy, and in Chinese philosophy, they call this balancing the kan and li, or the water and fire. This gives us the tools that we need to adjust our physical, mental, and emotional energetic states throughout the day. Everybody goes through emotional ups and downs throughout the day. Some people are like a roller coaster, others may be a little more balanced. But when you start to recognize these imbalances because of your heightened awareness through incorporating meditation into your life, now, when you start to get excited, we can use the yin side of the breath to help bring us back down. And when we start feeling depleted, we can use the yang side of the breath to help energize us and bring us back up. And this helps us find more balance throughout the day, which is very powerful in leading our energetic states as we move through the day. And then the third area is regulating the mind. And regulating the mind is an extremely deep concept. And we already kind of touched on that with being distracted when we're doing the meditation, right? And so having the ability to use these practices to come back and find that center and find that focus leads us to the point where we start to become unshakable. We start to develop this power that it doesn't matter if somebody says something to throw us off our game or we have a bad day at work. We're able to come back to a balanced state and approach it with an even mindset rather than an emotional mindset. And there's this story that I really enjoy about these two older monks, and they're walking down this dirt road just after a huge rainstorm, and it's muddy everywhere. They come up to this huge mud puddle, And on the other side of the puddle is this beautiful little girl, and she's standing there in a white dress and she's crying. And the older monk, he yells across the puddle and says, "Is everything okay? Can we help you?" And she says, "Yes, I need to be somewhere, but if I walk across this puddle, I'm going to get my dress all dirty." So the older monk, he rolls up his pant legs and he walks across the puddle and picks her up, puts her on his back, takes her to the other side, sets her down, and she's off on her way. Well, him and the younger monk are walking a couple miles down the road, and finally the younger monk is just furious and he says, "You know we're not supposed to touch girls, but yet you did back there at the puddle." And the older monk looks down and says, "You're still thinking about that girl? I left her back there at the puddle." And how many times in life do we have to get 2 miles down the muddy road before we realize we got to let this thing go, and on through meditation, it allows us to recognize these imbalances before they gain too much negative momentum. And it
Mhm.
also gives us the tools to help bring us back to center so we can approach it without letting our emotions get involved. And so regulating the mind is an extremely powerful part of your meditation journey. Then the fourth regulation is regulating the energy. And we could literally talk about this for hours, but briefly, just to describe it, would
Yeah.
be when we get to the point where we're competent in regulating the body, the breath, and the mind, we now have the tools needed to circulate the energy in the body, to lead it inward, to extend it outward. And we will do this with different meditations and different advanced practices to help get different outcomes with our meditation practice. And then lastly, the fifth regulation is regulating the spirit. This is a very profound idea, and it's something that meditation practitioners and Qigong masters will spend their entire life's journey working towards that stage of enlightenment. Well, once you understand these five regulations or these fundamental foundational principles, you can see that incorporating these practices into your life can affect everything we do. And then it doesn't matter what meditation path we decide to follow, whether we're doing it for the athletic side of the practice, the therapeutic side, the medical side, the philosophical side, or the spiritual side. We can cultivate things that will help us because we have such a strong foundation.
Now, you laid a lot on us right there with those five regulations. And I love that proverb of the two monks because it's really relatable. I was like, there are a lot of times that we hang on to grudges or just the past way too long. And then all of a sudden we look, we're like, why didn't we leave that back there? It's not serving me to keep thinking about this. It doesn't enhance my journey. It just kind of throws me out of harmony. So the fact that that's one of your core principles is to regulate the mind and make the distinction of the mind and the spirit because they are different. I understand how that could actually be beneficial to your clients and anybody else who's been practicing this along the way with you.
Anybody, I don't care who you are, can benefit from meditation. The Dalai Lama once said that everybody should meditate for 20 minutes a day. Unless you're too busy, then we should meditate for an hour. And I love that saying. And I truly believe that if everybody on the planet meditated, there would be so many less problems on this planet. We get so caught up in our day-to-day activities and distractions and having a cell phone tethered to our hand, all of these things, that a lot of times we're forced to move through the day and move through our lives where we have these barriers up. It's almost as if we're wearing a mask everywhere we go because
Mhm.
we don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, or we don't want to say something that we're truly feeling inside because we don't want to feel vulnerable, or whatever the reason is. We have these barriers up, and what happens is we start living this way, and eventually we start looking at ourselves in the mirror and we're still wearing that mask. And the idea with a meditation practice is it's one of those things that helps us put down these barriers and these masks and really stay connected to who we are, which I think is an invaluable skill to have and something that everybody should experience.
I could not agree more. And as you were saying that, it really struck me because a lot of, well, I don't know your clientele, but I assume you have a fair amount of male students, and meditation isn't something that a lot of men in this current scape tend to think is quote unquote attractive or necessary. They don't always see the benefit of staying balanced or finding their center. But with how volatile our lives can be, from managing romantic relationships, work, family, you need something to just keep you here, keep you present. And I love that your practice, like I said, is two tone in the sense that you have these five regulations to help people keep their bodies and their minds sharp so that they are always operating as their best self in a sense. Yeah. So when somebody comes to you and they're starting on this journey, do you always start with regulating the body, or does it really matter where they start?
Regulating the body is usually something that is always involved in the first session. However, I think more importantly than that even is addressing the mindset and making sure that when you approach this practice, that we do it in a way that's going to help us be successful. Because, for me, I've been teaching now for over 30 years. And one of the most challenging things that I've experienced being a teacher is that it's very difficult to get people to integrate a habit into their life. And even though it's something that can be really beneficial to them, if they're not used to meditating every day, it's not an easy thing to do. Trying to get anybody to do something every day when they're not used to it is always a challenge. And so through the years, I've come up with these three things that I like people to think about. And I find that if they spend some time there and they're really contemplate them and put some energy towards this, that they're going to have a lot better chances of being successful and really seeing what the benefits of a meditation practice can bring. And the first one is
Yeah.
thinking about why you're drawn to the practice. Why do you want to take on meditation? Do you want to stay healthier into your later years so you can watch your grandkids grow up? Are you dealing with a stress disorder, anxiety, or panic attacks, or an illness? Do you want to improve your performance on the field as an athlete or a creative? Whatever that is for you. And then not just a surface level why, but once you have that why, think about all of the positive changes that will come to you in your life by making that why a reality. And when you do that, it helps to kind of build all these positive thoughts and these things that will come and start to gain momentum. But then I also like them to think about, okay, now that we understand that side of it, what happens if we don't do that? What are all the negative things that are going to come into our life if we don't reach that level of development? And then think about that. And now that gives them the fuel to be more assertive and more consistent with their practice and have that motivation. So tomorrow morning, when the alarm goes off, they're not tempted to hit the snooze button. And then that's the second thing they need to understand is that with a meditation practice, it's not meant to be a hobby we do once in a while. It's meant to be something that we integrate into our life and do a little bit of every day. And so if you can integrate ritual practice every day, some active practices, and some philosophical practices. Now, through that consistency, we start to develop this discipline and integrity and this perseverance that not only is a changing in our practice, but it affects everything we do in life. And so that consistency is extremely important. And then the third thing that I have them consider is that it's extremely important to find a guide. There are so many videos out there on YouTube and apps and audios and things that you can listen to that teach this practice or that practice. And if you think that you can be self-taught in a practice like this that's going to get you to any depth, you're wasting a lot of time. And I've literally seen people come into the academy who have been self taught and they've been training for 15, sometimes 20 years. And they'll see somebody who's only been here 6 or 12 months, who's a lot further along in their practice. And it's kind of discouraging. Our lifetime is short, your time is valuable. Finding somebody to help you and guide you and point you in the right direction is not very difficult to do. So if you can make those three considerations and really find a strong why, understand that this is somewhat of a commitment, that you got to be consistent, and then find somebody to help show you the shortest path to the positive outcome you're looking to get, it will really increase your chances of being successful with the practice.
Now, can you tell us what made you arrive at this thought process? Because, like I said, I'm pretty sure you just didn't wake up one day and really commit to this. You mentioned earlier your mentor kind of got you started on this meditative journey, but was there ever a moment, maybe life's a little bit out of control, I need help, or I need to find something to help keep me level?
It was a combination of things, really. I had an incident happen in the beginning at about maybe the 6 month mark of my practice where it was almost a euphoric state that happened during a meditation that really inspired me and got me motivated to dive deeper into the practice. And then through those first few years of practice, I started noticing all of these changes happening in my life and seeing how I was becoming more focused and more creative and more intuitive, and all of these things that started to come from the practice. It got to the point where I never looked at it from that point on like, hey, this is a chore I got to do every day. I looked at it like, hey, this is something I get to do. This is amazing. Look at all the things that I'm learning from doing this practice. And from that point on, it's never been a struggle or something that, has been difficult to do. And in fact, I have a daily ritual that I do every day, and I haven't missed a day of that ritual in 5 years since I had my hip surgery. And the only reason I missed then is because I was laying in bed for a few weeks. And so, it's just part of who I am at this point. And when you start this practice and you get to the point where you start seeing all of the benefits pile in, you'll do it for the rest of your life. It'll be one of the best things you've ever done for yourself.
Well, that's good. That's good. Now, everybody loves a relatable example. Obviously, you started practicing before you had kids. Is there any one principle that you take especially into that relationship with your partner, or that helps you solidify that bond between you and your kids? Because I'm pretty sure you really need to regulate your breath having some of the conversations.
There's so many philosophical concepts that come with meditation. I could probably list many, but one that stands out is the idea of yielding. In my most recent book, The Yielding Warrior, I talk about a concept called yielding. There's physical yielding, mental yielding, and emotional yielding. Physical yielding is the idea that I push you, you push me, whoever's the bigger, stronger person with the most leverage eventually is going to push the other person over. But with yielding, instead of us trying to see who the bigger meathead is, when you push me, I get out of the way of that force. And now I can respond with less effort. So I'm not trying to butt heads with you and see if I'm bigger and stronger than you. And this allows me to be strategic and overcome somebody who's bigger and stronger than me. And now in athletics, it's easy to see how this is beneficial because it doesn't matter what sport you play, you're going to come up against athletes who are bigger and stronger than you. And learning how to deal with this force and redirect it and get the outcome that you want to see is very powerful. Now, in order to be good at physical yielding, a lot of things have to come into play. You need to be well rooted. The lower part of your body needs to be strong and flexible so you can change your central equilibrium without getting tight. The body has to be relaxed, the breath has to be calm, and the mind has to be present. Now, while it may be a lifetime journey to really master these skills, once you start incorporating meditation into your life, you start to see these things more clearly inside yourself from day one. And when you start to expand that awareness and see those things with more detail, now not only do you see them more clearly inside yourself, but you also see them more clearly in other people. And this is where we start moving into what I call mental yielding. Now, mental yielding is the idea that, say, you and I are having a conversation and I say something that unsettles you, and I pick up on it right from that first sign of imbalance. It's a lot easier to adjust the conversation and keep us in a harmonious place than if I'm not paying attention to that. And pretty soon I'm so far off track, you want to slap me upside the head. And so learning how to use yielding in all of our interactions is extremely powerful. One, we're just being more considerate, which is something that we could all do more of. And two, it allows us to be strategic in our interactions so we can lead conversations to a positive outcome with the least amount of conflict and resistance. And this is beneficial in our relationships and business and sales and negotiations. I mean, there's so many different applications of how we can use this. Now, the third pillar is emotional yielding. Emotional yielding is very much like mental yielding, but with our own interpersonal conflicts. So when you think about, oftentimes something will happen to us and we'll respond and we'll go down this path. And we might get an hour, a day, a week down that road and realize maybe that wasn't the best choice. But by incorporating meditation into our life and being aware and more in tune of what's going on, when these things happen to us, it allows us to stay present, to not get emotional, and to stay centered so we can respond from a more educated place and oftentimes save us a lot of heartache on the other side. And I've been explaining this idea of yielding now for many years. And one of the most common things I'll hear people say is yielding makes a lot of sense. In fact, I do yielding all the time. And while I would agree, and I think that everybody does some degree of yielding all the time, it's kind of like if you or I were to walk into a crime scene with a detective who's been on the job for 30 years. I guarantee you that person would see things about the series of events in the timeline that I know at least I would have no clue of. By integrating meditation into your life, you start to see things inside yourself and inside of other people that I truly believe most people will go through life and never have any clue of unless they develop some kind of practice like this.
Now, that really does speak to perspective. Once again, that was such a relatable analogy you gave. Somebody who's experienced, who meditates, things will definitely handle situations different than people who are sporadic in their practice and or who don't do it at all. So I can only imagine, like I said, the difference from you doing this from decades than the people coming in starting today or yesterday.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about it like this, and we all do this. No, nobody's innocent of this, but, think about a time maybe when you're angry about something and you're off centered and you're emotional. And then somebody comes to you innocently and says something and you immediately bark at them for no reason at all. They didn't do anything wrong. Now, being in that emotional, unbalanced state, oftentimes will lead us down that path that leads to one negative thing to another to another. Whereas if we could recognize those imbalances and stay focused and stay centered, now when that person comes to you, it's a lot easier to approach and respond to them from a balanced place, which is going to be totally different than when we're emotional. And so having this ability to understand that and see that is really essential in life. It's kind of like, if you're standing up on a hill and you drop a rock, it's easy to bend over and pick it up. But if that rock starts rolling down the hill and starts an avalanche, it's difficult to stop. And our thoughts are a lot like this. If we start letting one lead to another, sometimes it's hard to get off that negative path. But by heightening our awareness and being more in tune of these imbalances when they first happen, it's a lot easier to make those adjustments so we don't get too far down that negative path.
For everybody listening, wanted to get started today, really focusing on these 5 regulations, who also wanted to start reading your book, is there any one particular thing that you could suggest that they could see? I hate saying an immediate difference, but that they could start today to really make an effective change?
Yes. So the most important thing, which we already touched on it, is sit down, investigate your why, understand that this practice is going to be something that you need to be consistent with, and how to start a ritual, active, and philosophical practices, and then find yourself a guide. If you do those three things, that will put you on the path to success. Now, something, if you are talking about a technique that you could do, something simple that you would notice results from right away is, and this isn't a ritual practice, this is what I call an active practice, which is one of the many things you want to integrate when creating a meditation lifestyle, would be to set an alarm on your phone to go off, say, every 90 minutes, all day, every day. And every time that alarm goes off, shut your phone off and just count out 10 deep, relaxed breaths and then go back to your day. And if you do that 10 times a day, 8 times a day, you will find that you start to become a lot more centered, a lot more aware. And this is one of the things, one of the tools that can help you start to move down that path.
I always say the best takeaway is a tangible takeaway. And I think that's something easy that everybody who's listening right now can do is, no matter how busy we are, taking 10 breaths and really focusing on those breaths throughout the day is very doable. I was like, when you get up, after a shower, before you leave out, before you start work, after you get off work. I mean, it's so easy to incorporate into your day, but sometimes it's literally the babyest of steps that will lead to the biggest breakthroughs. I think we've learned a lot today. This is a great start for a lot of listeners out there who are having trouble feeling a sense of control in their life, who are looking to find new outlets to maybe express not their anger, but just all that emotion that they're feeling inside. Because, like you said, you started off wanting to be just a better boxer, but you've now just become an overall better person, a more grounded person. And it's helped you maintain what sounds to be an amazing life with a partner, 2 beautiful children, and a thriving practice, to say the least, and a book that's done well. So thank you for sharing some of that wisdom. But before we get you out of here, I have to ask, where can our audience get a hold of this book?
Right now, I'm giving away a free copy of the book on my website. If you just go to theyieldingwarrior.com/book, you just pay for shipping and handling. We'll send you out a copy of the book. Also, at theyieldingwarrior.com, you could get into our online program. You can try it out for a couple weeks and kind of see what the strategy is behind it and some of the things that we're doing, and start creating a personalized meditation practice for yourself. And I also have my teacher training program up there for those of you maybe who own a yoga studio or a martial arts studio and you want to learn how to add another pillar to your business and maybe target a market where you're not reaching yet. In our meditation program here at the Academy, we have students in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and even 80s and 90s here. Whereas, the average martial arts studio out there, targets 20s, 30s, and 40-year-olds. And so having that as a pillar in your business can be very helpful.
That's amazing. Guys, if you are in the Portland area, stop by and take one of these classes, whether it's the more physical martial arts classes or the meditation class itself, or both. I mean, you can never be in too good of shape, mentally or physically. Go check out his website to get your copy of this book today and share it with a friend. Because one of the things I've been working on, Jeff, I just turned 30. I said I want to fill up my bookcase. And I love reading books that I can keep going back to and just getting a new takeaway from. And I can only imagine how many read throughs it's going to take me to get through these regulations to really digest it all. And I'm pretty sure there are a lot of other amazing nuggets that are in there. So I can't wait to add that book to the shelf. And then I will see all you amazing bachelors and bachelorettes next week for another episode of the Not So Bad Bachelor Pad.